Hello and welcome to the Our Town research video. Mark number Hudson. Um, so for my research assignments, I was given the politics of 1900s. At least that's what I think I was given, and then the day-to-day life of the 1900s, from 1900 to 1913, and then Vermont marble, some riveting stuff. And that actually is true. There's a lot to kind of tackle here, so we're going to take them one by one. So we're going to start with politics. So with politics, early in the 1900s, and like at the beginning of that time, they were moving from a more agricultural-based lifestyle to an urban, an industrial economy, and so during the years of 1900 to 1909, over 8 million immigrants poured into the United States in search of jobs and opportunity. And before the turn of the century, about 5 out of 6 Americans lived and worked at a farm. But by 1910, almost 50% of Americans resided in cities. So if we think about like five of 6, and then almost like 3 or 4 of those people moved to cities during this time. So a lot of kind of crazy things happening in that specific area. Another thing about the politics about the 1900s is that the federal government had an economic policy of laissez-faire, which means hands-off economy. And so what that means is that all the businesses kind of were able to run free without any regulation or stuff like that to rein them in. And so businesses would often collect into these groups called trusts, and into one big group, and they would kind of monopolize the system of working. In fact, I have something on this spreadsheet that says that about there were 7 men at the start of the century who owned all the railroads in the United States. 7 men. And these like big businesses would often treat their workers poorly just because they could, and they wanted more labor for longer hours and with meager wages. So kind of hard. In fact, it kind of leads to this next statistic. More than 500,000 Americans were injured on the job each year, and 30,000 died in unsafe factories and mines. And so like that dissatisfaction was a part of the political landscape at that time. And there were these journalists called muckraking journalists who would go around and kind of dig up all of the bad things that were happening, like all the injustice, and tell everybody about it, right? So it's no longer a centralized thing where it's just the workers that know that they're being treated poorly. It's everybody knows that these massive corporations are taking advantage of the working class. And so a bunch of problems there. Another thing with some kind of political things, this has some stuff to do with race. Immigration was a huge thing, as I said earlier. There were so many immigrants coming in to the U.S., and the United States was not very welcoming of their customs. They were kind of told, hey, you got to be American, to conform to the American way. And in fact, in almost all respects, the races were segregated. So black people and white people would barely see each other. It was that bad, where they didn't attend schools or churches or any type of meeting house, anything like that. And so there was not very much meaningful contact. The most significant political force of the turn of the century was President Theodore Roosevelt. He came in, I think it was in 1904. And the U.S. had kind of been going through a period where they had been super bored by their presidents and stuff like that. And, and he just revolutionized and made you feel like, wow, proud to be an American. We gotta fight for what we want. So he was kind of super influential. To go on to the second topic, day-to-day life, and I've kind of already had that happen, but day-to-day life, life expectancy was actually just 48 years for white Americans and 33 years for African Americans. So it was not likely that you would live long, just at all. And so, like in 1900, if a mother had 4 children, there was a 50-50 chance that one would die before the age of 5. And half of all young people had lost a parent before the time they reached age 21. So, kind of crazy. In fact, in the 1900s, the average family had an annual income of $3,000 in today's dollars. They had no indoor plumbing, no phone, no car. Half of American children lived in poverty. Most teens didn't attend school. They worked, gotta help your family out on the farm. In 1900, children and teenagers were under the age of 16, accounted for 44% of the population. And in 1900, less than 2% of young people graduated from high school. So not many people got through to that end place. In the 1900s, American women could vote in only 4 Western states. Not great. And just 700,000 married women, 6%, were in the paid labor force, which gives you a little bit of perspective. And today the figure is 34 million, to give you a little bit more perspective, about 64%. And that's kind of like the day-to-day life, just if you're a kid, you're most likely to be living poverty, or you're out there working on a farm with your dad or family just to make ends meet. The third step is the Vermont marble, and Vermont marble is actually pretty cool. The Vermont Marble Company is what I think it's talking about, and it was actually a huge company. It in the early in the century of 1700, either 1700 or 1800s, it was considered the largest U.S. corporation in the world, and obviously it changed from then to now, but it's believed that the first quarry in Vermont was the first in North America. So Vermont Marble was the first quarry there, and Vermont Marble Company acquired rights to all the marble deposits in Vermont, Colorado, and Alaska, and became the giant of the industry for a century. So probably from like 1800 to 1900. So, I mean, we're getting to the end life cycle of Vermont by the time the play starts, but still a very big part of the marble industry. They have some pretty cool, notable structures, like the United States Supreme Court building and the Jefferson Memorial Building were built using Vermont marble, which is kind of cool. And employees from the company came from all over the world. Like marble carvers specifically came to this place from Carrara, Italy, and Ireland to work specifically with Vermont marble. That's kind of the biggest thing. Oh, all these immigrants coming in to help with the carving allowed Proctor, where it was based, and the surrounding areas to be very rich in cultural diversity, which gives you a little bit more insight. Now, to kind of put this in perspective with George and Emily during their lifetimes, the country was moving away from an agricultural-based lifestyle to an urban-based lifestyle where you have more cars, more indoor plumbing, stuff like that, and you don't have to maybe work as much on a farm and stuff like that. And so George, when deciding whether or not to go to agricultural school, is he can choose to kind of continue with that agricultural-based lifestyle or go into the industrial-based lifestyle, which is two very different paths, and we know which one kind of took over in the end. And to kind of talk about that fact that George graduated from high school is insane, because as I talked about earlier, most teens didn't attend school at all, and about 2% of young people graduated from high school, like in the entire United States. So it's just a huge number of people that just didn't make it. And so the fact that he graduated and then chose not to go to agricultural college is significant, and I think it's a significant accomplishment that he finished the high school experience. To talk about Emily and George, the fact that Emily dies, that actually was expected back then. I mean, it wasn't expected, but the life expectancy of someone living back then is 48 years, and that's not very long. In fact, it says here that where was it? Half of all young people had lost a parent before they reached the age of 21, and there was 50-50 chance that a mother would lose a child before the age of 5. Combine all those mortality rates, and it's just kind of a likely thing that Emily is going to die. Emily or George. It just gives you a little bit more perspective into that. That might be on their minds, is how long are we going to live together when, life is so short, especially back then. And Marble, a lot of cultural diversity that'll give George and Emily some things to worry about, especially with the kind of the pressure on immigrants to say, hey, you got to be American. But I think in this play, there's not a lot of that influence. I think, just the fact that the marble was super prevalent. They'd probably know a little bit about the buildings and architecture there. So that is my thing. So I'm turning in. Bye.